So if you were looking at this and thinking to yourself, what's going on there? What kind of universe have I landed in? You were right. It is definitely a little spooky and strange to have the eyeballs and the wings on the same side. Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 149 in the series. It's called Just Say No to Seams. And I'm not kidding around. I'm serious. Just say no to seams. I haven't seamed in so long, and it feels like the last couple of weeks have been all seaming all the time. So we're going to get to that. Welcome back to the yarn room. If you are coming back, welcome back. It's lovely to see you here. It is a beautiful, well, I don't know. It's a pretty Saturday morning when I'm filming today. The thunder was rolling in earlier. We'll see if it holds off. We've had a rainy, cold August here in New York, and it's been very strange. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. This is usually a cast about garment and sweater knitting, construction, design, modification, and I do have a child size, a little pint size sweater to talk about today. This is my finished Gartrell Pullover or Gartrell Crew. But I also knit all kinds of other things. So, you know, blankets and shawls and fun ladybugs like I have today. I also have Ladybug. And everything that I knit today was seamed. So that's what we're going to talk about. If you're looking for me elsewhere on the internets, you can find me just about everywhere as Knitting the Stash. That's right here on YouTube, obviously, over on Instagram, on Ravelry, and on the main website, which is knittingthestash.com. That is where I offer online classes. I have a flock farm yarn shop over there featuring indie flocks and yarns and fiber from across the country in the United States. Yeah, so that's kind of the hot place to be if you want to check stuff out. I also have a Destash page. It is still up. There's still Destash happening. And I am offering a discount on the classes for the summer. So if you use the code SUMMERSCHOOL, you can check out my online classes and get a discount on them. So yeah, they're full online classes, all videos, asynchronous, so you take them at your own pace. I have classes over there on sweater modification, beginning sweater modification, creative sweater modification, sweater cloning, and then I have a free class on YouTube that's all about how to read a sweater pattern. So you sense a theme here, lots of sweaters. But anyway, the code SUMMERSCHOOL will get you a little discount on those classes. And I've seen some people taking advantage of it. It's lovely to have new people in the classroom. I'm looking forward to seeing how you do with the classes and seeing any questions that you have. So hit me up either on email, knittingthestash at gmail.com, or through the comments via the classroom. You'll see. All right, we might as well jump into seaming. I've been trying to avoid it, I guess, for the last 2 minutes. When last we spoke, I was knitting the Gartrell Pullover, or the Gartrell Crew. I think this was there's also a cardigan version of this, if I'm remembering right. This is a Tanis Fiber Arts pattern, and it can be knit up in stripes like this, or it could be knit solid. You know, it's just a basic raglan construction, and it goes all the way from baby sizes like 0 to adult sizes, very size inclusive and child inclusive, and it's kind of like unisex inclusive. It's all kinds of things. Really nicely designed pattern. I like Tanis's patterns. I've knit a couple of them, I think, if I'm remembering right. Maybe some of her toys, if not her sweaters. But this one came out lovely. I made a few mods to it, so I'll tell you about those. But the thing about this sweater and the thing about seaming is that I've been knitting a lot of, I tended when I started knitting to knit bottom-up sweaters. And my first bottom-up sweater was one in which after you knit the basic shell of the body, you went back in, picked up stitches, knit sleeve caps that had short rows, and then knit your sleeves down. So there wasn't a lot of seaming involved. I have knit other seamed sweaters since then. I knit a Denali sweater for Spencer, which was heavily cabled. It was all in panels, knit flat, because that's just, you need structure when you have that much cabling, and you know, you just need some seams for things to hang off of. So I've done seaming and seamed sweaters and piece sweaters in the past, but I had forgotten. I had forgotten how long the finishing process can take on a sweater. So if you're used to knitting top-down sweaters, or you're used to knitting sweaters where the finishing is integrated like a ziggurat kind of method, or sweaters where you maybe are knitting the bottom up but you're doing the sleeve caps in short rows and knitting the sleeves down, seaming might might jump up and bite you. So this one, I finished the pieces, the front piece, the back piece, and both sleeves relatively quickly, but then the fun began. I did take some footage of me seaming, so I will put that in here so you can see the actual process. Basically, what I decided to do is what I think is recommended in the pattern, and it's generally a good way to go with raglan sweaters. You basically start by seaming, you lay down the back of the sweater, and then you seam up the back 2 raglans first. And you kind of get a good seam going on there on both sides, so that then your sleeves will kind of lay open, and you can then just turn them in half and seam the front, the front raglan. And then once that's all done, then I started actually seaming up the sides of the sweater. So, this part here was also open, and as were the sleeves were knit flat. So there are 2 seams here, actually. There's one on the side of the sweater, and then one on the side, or the underarm of the sleeve. And so that process took me forever. Not really, but it felt like forever. Probably took a day or 2. But it also involved steaming the sweater pieces ahead of time, which is something I would highly recommend. If you are knitting a sweater in pieces that you plan on finishing, once you're done knitting the pieces, lay them out on a damp towel. I don't like to get them all wet because then they take forever to dry. You're trying to get through this process. So I lay out my a wet towel, a damp towel, and then I put my piece down on the damp towel and put another damp towel on top of it and run the iron on top of both. And that way, no matter what yarn you're using, you're not going to create so much heat from the iron directly on the yarn that it's going to stick to it or melt, especially if you're using an acrylic or a superwash for gift knitting. But it protects all of your yarn. Now, you don't want to take a hot iron to your knitting. I can't really think of an occasion where you'd want to do that. So the best thing to do is to use those damp cloths on either side of your knitting to kind of give you a little barrier between the iron and the actual garment that you're steaming. Once the pieces are steamed, they lay nice and flat. So when they're flat, it's much, much easier to seam them together because you don't have all those curly edges kind of trying to move out of the way of the tapestry needle as you're trying to do your seams. Now, with this particular sweater, some of you, I'm guessing, you intrepid knitters out there, are going to say, why not just knit it in the round? And you are correct that this could have been knit in the round. A lot of sweaters can be converted back and forth from flat and pieces to knitting in the round. So yes, I could have knit this from the bottom up to the armpits and then done a flap for the front, a flap for the back, and a flap for the sleeves. That would have been fine. Could have seamed those all up. It would have saved me a little bit of seaming. It would have saved me the side seams on the sleeves and the body. And I'd still be knitting flattened pieces for the upper back, the upper front, and the upper sleeves. So yes, I could have done that, but I didn't, because then you're kind of flopping around with this thing that's kind of connected and kind of weird. And anyway, I didn't do it that way. And I do have different colors on the sleeves than I do for the body, which I like very much. I talked about that last time. There was some debate in the comments about whether or not we all liked that, or if other people had different things to say. I know Michelle, who has been a long time watcher and commenter, hi Michelle, said that she actually likes to have the same colors in the stripes and the sleeves, or on the body and the sleeves. So personal preference, total personal preference. I just liked it this way, so that's what I did. And yeah, but the seaming took forever and a day. Once that was done, I actually ended up redoing the seams just a little bit because I felt like they weren't strong enough. Oftentimes with seaming, and you'll see this with the Ladybug in a minute, you don't have to be super, super precise depending on what you're working on. So my Ladybug, which is really cute, and I'll just show her to you for a second. Ladybug, I didn't have to worry too much about the seams being as exact or as strong because that's not really what they're there for. They're not structurally supportive. But in the raglan, I found that if I was putting a little pressure on it, letting it hang, my initial seam, I think I might have skipped one. I might have gone every other pickup from my mattress stitch. And it was showing. It was separating and showing, and I wasn't super happy with it. So I went back in and redid a couple of the raglans. And now you can see that it hangs very nicely no matter kind of how you pull it, and you don't see any kind of gaping going on there. So with that seaming, I did need to go in and pick up every single stitch to make sure that I was getting a good seal on my raglans. So yeah, that took a little extra time too. Seaming, oh my goodness. So maybe let's move away from seaming for a minute. I'm feeling a little growly about it. Probably just because I had to do so much of it on the sweater, and then when I worked on the Ladybug, it was all seaming as well. So I just had forgotten how long it takes to do seaming. Once the seams were done, I put this lovely little collar on the sweater. I didn't quite follow the instructions. The instructions are to knit a collar double the length and then fold it over and whip stitch it down. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm dealing with like a kid's sweater and I want to make sure it'll fit over her head. I wanted to make sure I had a lot of stretch there. And sometimes when you turn a collar and then whip stitch it, you can get it a little tight. And if the person's right there with you, you can undo it and make sure that it's loose enough. But if they're not here, which she isn't, she's across the country, I wanted to make sure that it was loose enough. So I even checked this, it will fit over my head. So, but you can see that it's not so stretched out that it, won't go back to shape. So what I ended up doing is just doing a 2x2 rib and then a kind of version of a tubular bind off on the top here. So you can see it has a nice finished look to it. And I did go, one of those awkward things about the tubular bind off for anyone who's done it recently is that if you go from 2x2 ribbing to the tubular bind off, there are a couple ways to do it. I decided to switch from 2x2 to 1x1, and I didn't do it in like a totally invisible way. I kind of liked the way that the switch from 2x2 to 1x1 left a little bit of a cutesy patterning along the collar, around the collar. So I left that, and then I just went for the sewn version of the tubular bind off, where I guess what I like to do with the tubular bind off, it's the way I learned it, I guess that's what makes me most comfortable, is to, when you have all your stitches, I like to separate them out, and it kind of lays open like this. So I put all of the knits on one side and all the purls on the other, like if they're facing you as stitches, I put all the knits on one side and the purls on the other. So the whole thing looks like this, and then you do the Kitchener. Now there's a way to do the tubular bind off where you leave all the stitches just on the needle next to each other and you just do this sewn thing. It's totally cool. I just didn't learn it that way, so I'm less comfortable with it. So I ended up putting all my stitches on 2 needles. And I think that's also, I'm trying to remember if that's specific to it being in the round. Doing the tubular bind off in the round can be a little bit tricky too. Anyway, it was fun. After all that seaming, I was like, let's work on the collar. So that's the collar that I did. I love the way that this shaping turned out. All of the seaming worked out well. And I also, the other thing that I did differently than what the pattern called for is that I left all the stitches live. So my front stitches right here were live at the end. My back stitches here were live, and the tops of my sleeves, these stitches, I left them live as well. The only ones where I had to pick up were these, right along the triangles here on the front of the sweater. I'll try to hold it up so you can see. So right here, these stitches on both sides had to be picked up, but that was it. And so I really like the way that that ended up looking. I think it looks kind of very pretty and finished. And it's a little bit easier if you're working on a collar to have those live stitches, depending on what's going on with the sweater. So if you go and read all the technical knitting manuals, they will tell you that sometimes you do need to bind off those stitches and then pick them back up because it's a structural thing. So if you have a very heavy sweater, this is not a very heavy sweater. It's not dependent on, a lot of structure up here in the, where the collar is. But sometimes if depending on what you're doing, you might want these stitches to be bound off and picked back up because that would create a seam on the inside. And wherever you have seams, I know I've been talking bad about seams all day, but wherever you have seams, you do have structure. So the thing about this sweater is that it does have, if I turn it inside out, thanks to all the seaming, we do have tons and tons of structure. So if you look at the yoke in the back, you can see we have the raglan seams here, and you can see we have the side seams here and the side seams on the sleeves. Don't mind all my little ends poking out. Those will just, no one will notice those, right? It's on the inside. And you do have the seam here, like I said, where I picked up stitches on either side. So those seams are structural. This is a superwash sweater because it's a gift knit, and I didn't want my poor daughter-in-law have to wash this, hand wash this. So yeah, so the seams are structural, and except I didn't do that in the case of this collar, and I think it turned out just fine. Now I haven't washed this. I haven't steamed the collar, so the collar is still puffing up just a little bit in the back, but I'm going to steam that before I send it off. Not going to wash it because I've heard that this yarn does pill, and I want it to arrive at least looking fresh. And I will warn her that it might pill up a little bit when she washes it for the first time, to try to do it on a gentle cycle. So we'll see how it stands up over the years. I also knit it probably a size or two too big. And I've been reassured by everyone I've said that to, that it's better big than small, and I agree. So I think it'll be a little bit big, maybe a little bit long to begin with, but she can grow into it. So yeah. Okay, after all my talk about seaming, I just want to say I do love this sweater. I think it's really beautiful. I think it came out well. I love the colors. These were all the Knit Picks Swish DK superwash yarn. I picked out like a million colors, and I think they all worked out. Last time I talked about the color, kind of like how I chose my colors and how I chose to move colors around for the sleeves versus the body. So yeah, now you can actually see what I was talking about. Like I inverted the white and black on the sleeve, and we got a little bit of the blue going on here, but I didn't, the cuffs and the hem are different colors, but I put that yellow up here again, you know, so kind of like balancing things out, and the blue down here ends up kind of up here. So there's a little bit of balancing going on, and I really love the way that it turned out. I love the weight of it. It's very soft. I think it's really cute, and I hope she loves it. So yay. So that's the Gartrell Crew. That's for my little granddaughter. And I was told that my granddaughter also loves ladybugs, which is something we didn't talk about. We talked about rainbows when I saw her, but not ladybugs. So I was going to knit a second sweater with like ladybugs on it or something. But you know, I couldn't find a pattern that I really loved. And I didn't want to, I just couldn't find one. So I'll have to either invent one or something else. But I thought she needs a ladybug to go with her sweater. So this is Ladybug, and she's all finished. She was also a seaming nightmare. Not nightmare. Seaming is fine. It's just a little tedious sometimes. So let me tell you about the pattern first, and then I've got some footage of me seaming this little lady up so that you can see the whole process. So this pattern, I did search on Ravelry for ladybugs, and while sweaters didn't come up as readily for me, though there were some cool colorwork charts for ladybugs that you could add later or add into another pattern. So if you are looking for ladybugs, there are charts out there. I found this ladybug in Ravelry, or on Ravelry, and then I picked up the book. This is Little Knitted Creatures by Amy Gaines. And this is from, let me see what year, when did this come out? This, oh, somebody put the table of, I got it used, so somebody put the table of contents back in the little thing there. This is a 2010, so it's a 13-year-old publication. You can pick it up used in a lot of different places. You can see the little birds and bees. There's the little ladybug. And I'll show you her pattern. In here, there's also a frog and a fish and a bee that are really adorable. So that's what she's supposed to look like. Little ladybug love. This is called Lindsay Lady Beetle. And Lindsay Lazy Beetle is a seamed up toy. So there are a lot of toys out there, or what do you call them? Stuffies or little, there are a couple names, keywords that you can use on Ravelry for these, and I cannot think right now of what they are. Little knitted creatures. Anyway. So this ladybug is a seamed creature. There are tons of other creatures out there that are seamless. So if you, like me, are tired of seams, you might search for seamless creature and see what you can find. Because there are tons of them out there that don't require a lot of seaming. And actually a lot of the creatures that I've made, Susan B. Anderson's creatures are pretty good like that. Even the two little dolls that I made, the two little Norwegian dolls, Sven and Solveig, that I showed you guys in a recent episode, those were relatively seamless. I think the only seam involved the bottom of their feet, actually, because you just start at the top, you start at the head, and you just knit the whole thing top down seamlessly. Even the even the sweater, even the arms and the legs, all of it is totally seamless. So if you're looking for seamless stuff, Susan B. Anderson's stuff is great. Those two little creatures are great. And I'm trying to maybe in the comments, if you all do knit toys and you have other seamless designers to recommend, please do so. The thing about seaming with toys that is fun is that you can do all kinds of different things. So sometimes when you have seamless toys, you are limited to what you can do with your increases and decreases. And, you know, if you want to create other fun things, then you do need to create them separately and add them on to the little doll or whatever it is. So I'm not against seams. I'm just tired of them right now. So this one went relatively quickly. It's knit up in a bunch of pieces. And like I said, I have some footage here, so I'll show you. You have the main body, you have the 2 antennae, the 2 arms, the 2 legs, the 2 wings, the eyes, and the spots for the wings. So it's a lot of different pieces that have to come together. And basically in the pattern, I believe, Amy Gaines recommends, like what she did, I think it's to, she might have placed the wings before sewing up the body, but I think she sews up the body relatively early in the pattern. I left the body open with the exception of the bottom. I did close up the bottom of the body, left the sides open, and that allowed me to have easy access to the inside of the toy for weaving in ends, and attaching yarn and all kinds of other things. It just made it a little bit easier for me. So you'll see in this little quick footage of me seaming that I basically attached, once I had attached the eyes to the top of the face, I went ahead and sewed the bottom of the body shut and then attached the legs so that I'd have a chance to, you know, really get the legs attached well and be able to hide those ends easily. Then I added the spots to the wings and seamed up the wings on the outside and added the wings to the body. And then I added the antenna and the arms. So the last thing that I seamed onto this body was the left arm over here. And that was right at the very end after I had sewn up the last side. So yeah, I didn't stuff this guy or seam up the main body for quite some time. I really gave myself as much room and everything as possible to hide those ends and make my life easier, because I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not really great with like sewing things together. It's not like my favorite activity. And a lot of people say, well, if you knit your own clothes, you should sew your own clothes. And I know a lot of you do, like multi-craftual, like you can sew, you can weave, you can knit, you can crochet, you can do all the things. I'm not so much of a sewist. It's not my hand sewing. I can do, obviously, but machine sewing gives me shivers, even though I love quilts. I'm really a big ball of contradictions today, but I appreciate you hanging out with me. So Lady Beetle is done. I really like the way that the wings ended up being attached and they're kind of movable. So I think for like, my granddaughter's going to be 4 in September. I think that's a kind of fun thing to do. Now, yes, for those of you who are like entomologists, there's something wrong here. We have the, okay, there's a lot of things wrong here. There are legs, okay, and arms, which, you know, doesn't really work out. But the other thing that's really kind of weird that Spencer, my husband, pointed out to me is that the wings are actually kind of open and opposite on the back. They almost look like they should be reversed, right? Like, but that's how they are in the pattern. And then the wings of a ladybug are on the back, and then the eyeballs should be on the front, right? But instead, it's just one of those cute fantasy patterns where like the eyes and the wings are on the same side of the body. So if you were looking at this and thinking to yourself, what's going on there? What kind of universe have I landed in? You were right. It is definitely a little spooky and strange to have the eyeballs and the wings on the same side. But it's going to be okay. I didn't necessarily knit like a anatomically correct lady beetle, but that's okay. You know, 4-year-olds need some fantasy in their lives too. So that is the lady beetle, seamed up, finished. I thought the pattern has some really interesting ways of doing these spots, which I love. And I was kind of thinking it's a great technique for making these little circular things that could be really fun on some knitting projects. even like a sweater, you know, if you knit a bunch of these, you could kind of attach them, like if you wanted to do some cool kind of polka dotty or like Art Nouveau or kind of like a deco kind of a thing by adding some different elements. Rather than knitting them into the pattern, you could just attach them after the fact, which would be kind of cool. So now I'm thinking about that. Yeah, I like the way that they ended up being so perfectly kind of circular with just it's like a very simple technique, but you get this cool effect. Yeah. So Lady Beetle, totally flexible. I stuffed the ends of the feet, the ends of the hands, and the main body. I didn't stuff the wings, and I didn't stuff the actual legs or arms because I wanted, you know, some fun flexibility. And I did use the rest of my Georgia Rustic wool wool batting. This was something that I talked about with this Sven and Solveig. So this is, we have Georgia Rustic wool in the shop, in the Flock Farm Yarn shop, and Joanne Mackey is the shepherdess who runs Georgia Rustic wool, and she has Gulf Coast native sheep, and she sent me one of her bats, basically, to try out, and I have absolutely loved using it. She and I are talking about trying to get some of the bats in the shop. She's a busy lady. She, like me, and a lot of you, has like a full-time job. So we're trying to get her bats into the shop, I hope. Joanne, this is my note to myself to send you an email about that again. Yeah, so I love using 100% wool in these toys. It feels good. It has a good warmth to it. There's just something nice about having wool in a toy. It's just, you know, even if the toy has some superwash yarn or some acrylic yarn, having that wool in there, I think it just feels really good. And you can see it moves. Like there's something about it that doesn't really clump, and it doesn't do some of the funny things that kind of acrylic stuffing can do. So I love using the 100% wool for that. The yarn, I forgot to mention, what did I use for the yarn? So it is a toy. I wanted it to be easy to wash and clean and, you know, all that stuff. So a while ago I showed you all this little pack of yarn that I think it's for a crochet kit or something that Spencer got me. And I had originally thought I might even knit the sweater out of this yarn because it's an acrylic, and I thought, okay, it's machine washable. And inside there are just tons of colors. You can see I pulled some of the colors out because that's what I did for the Ladybug. I used the black and the red. But this is just, you know, I'll put a link to this down below if you're interested in having a big pack of these tiny little balls of yarn in all kinds of a million different colors. I'll put a link down below so you can see where Spencer found this amazing gift of color. And if you're interested, you could pick one up for yourself. They're perfect for making these little toys. And I kind of want to knit more seamless toys. So I might go do some more. I wanted to send another toy, but I think I should just hold off now and just send the sweater and the Ladybug. Her birthday's coming up, and it would be nice for her to have her little things in time for that celebration. So yeah, so I think that's it. I think that's probably the last seamed toy I do for a little while, but I like the way she turned out. I think she's really cute, good sized, looks a little bit like a weird Ladybug alien, but that's okay. We're all right with that. Yeah, that's what I've been up to the last couple of weeks. Seaming. You might be like, but you also knit. You knit some stuff. I did knit some stuff, but it was mostly seaming. Mattress stitching. Oh, mattress stitching. Anyway, I'll come out of the fog eventually. I think that's just about it for today. I do have, sometimes you ask what sweater I have on my mannequin. I do have, this was the Snidronigan by Isabel Kramer that I just finished before the summertime last year. It's probably the sweater that I'm looking most forward to wearing in the fall. I haven't had a chance to wear it yet because the weather got warm. It is beautiful. It's knit out of some really super luxury kind of yarns that Spencer got me for my birthday last year. And yeah, it's just been waiting. So I decided to bring it out, give it a little air, put it on the podcast. And yeah, I'm looking forward to wearing it once the weather actually cools off around here. And then the other thing I have is this. This is my Lunenburg pullover, which I have not even wound the yarn up for. I have all the yarn, all the colors selected. I haven't even opened this bag in I don't know how many weeks because I did Spencer's sweater, then a test knit, then I did all these knits and some other things. So This looks like fun. This looks like a very pretty sweater. Someone picked out good colors. So I'm going to wind this up. I'm going to cast on my Lunenburg finally after many months away from it. And that will be hopefully coming up on the cast in the next couple of weeks. So there you go. Happy weekending. I enjoyed hanging out with all of you, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.